of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howes.
And good evening. Welcome to the broadcast on this August 22nd, 2025, Friday night, August 22nd. I am going to have on with me a longtime friend from Ukraine tonight, Dr. Mark Musser. He is from the West Coast. He's a farmer, but he's also highly educated. Don't let him fool you. He does have a PhD, and he is an expert on history. Many of you have seen him in my documentary, Siege, which goes into partly the reason and motivation behind the Holocaust. He's an expert on the Holocaust. Remember me promoting the book many, many times, Nazi Ecology, or was it Nazi? Yeah, Nazi Ecology, I think it's called. It goes into really the Green Movement and how Hitler was behind that. I have it in my library there. Somebody want to bring it to me? You see, I think it's in one of those shelves right there. I think it's called Nazi. He changed the name of it. I think it's called Nazi Ecology, isn't it? Mark Musser. I can't remember what the name was originally. Then he turned around and changed the name. But it's a vital book. Everybody should read it. You hear me quote him quite a bit in that book and from that book. And so he's going to be my guest tonight. And he's from Ukraine. He's been moving between Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. There it is. Thank you. There it is. Nazi Ecology by Dr. Mark Musser. The oak sacrifice of the Judeo-Christian worldview in the Holocaust. Everybody should get a copy and read it. This is my guest tonight. We're not going to get into this tonight. We've interviewed him many, many times on that. But I want to talk tonight with him about Ukraine, about Russia, about Putin, about Zelensky, about globalism. What is this war really over? What is it being fought over? Can we really cheer on any of these guys? Either one of them, Zelensky or Putin? What's the worldview of Zelensky? What's the worldview of Putin? Is Zelensky really just a guy that comes out of the mob? Will there be a peace deal? And if there is, will it be very lasting? And then let's talk about America and where we're at. Is America in the last days? Is it mentioned? I mean, here America is trying to get this peace deal put together, President Trump. But America's fighting a proxy war with Russia through Ukraine. America's fighting Iran with Israel. America is now going up against Venezuela. And who's in Venezuela? Oh, I don't know. China, Hezbollah, Iran. China, Russia, Iran, Hezbollah. Maybe America's being spread a little thin. Maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's the objective. In other words, are there various groups that are fighting to bring down America, but fighting for globalism? And the different groups fighting for globalism are fighting for control. Maybe at the end of the day, there's no good side in any of this. I hate to say that. Maybe this is really what's going on is a big battle for who's going to control the New World Order and what it's going to look like. These are questions I want to ask Dr. Mark Musser, who's an expert on history and the Bible, as a Bible teacher, as a pastor. So this is going to be very important. We're going to cut past all the people that want to tell us their thoughts and their opinions, which, I do. They're free to do too. We'll cut past all of us sitting here in America looking over there and saying, well, this is what I think. This is what I think. And that's all fair and reasonable to do. I mean, you can still learn and listen and make assessments. But tonight we're going to get it from a guy who's bouncing between Russia and Ukraine. And tonight has just moved back to Ukraine. I think this is going to be very, very insightful. And I want to ask him, what does he think about what's happening to America? What does he think about what Donald Trump is doing? What does he think about the churches in America? As he has spent so much time traveling the world, and particularly that part of the world, and what's going on there, what's happening to Christians there. What is it that we, as many of us in this audience, Christian believers, need to be doing? I want to get to all that tonight with Dr. Mark Musser. But before we do, why don't you tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, invite lots of friends to join us, because this is going to be a very unique opportunity tonight. I think we're all going to learn something, including the host. I know I will, and I think you will too. So why not invite some friends to join us here tonight? It's free. What do they got to lose? Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. Tell them to join us right now. WorldviewTube.com. WorldviewTube.com. Only going to take a few minutes to do this. While you're tweeting, texting, emailing, Facebooking, calling, whatever you're doing, let me remind you, a free show like this, a free broadcast like this is not free to put out. Thousands and thousands of dollars we pay a month in bandwidth. Over $8,000 a month in bandwidth. Then that doesn't even count our IT bill. Do you know that our IT bill is $10,000 a month? Just for our IT department, to keep all of this running, keep all the Roku channels going, the iPhone app, the Android app, to stave off all the attacks, to keep the servers balanced so that all the traffic that's coming here can get it and not get a spinning wheel, to give us a soon coming Apple TV channel, to keep all the other channels going, our Prophecy Bible channel, our Bible channel itself. So we have one that's just prophecy, one that's just Bible teaching, one that's just news, one that's just health information. So we got a lot going on. And we have to have an IT department to do that. That's $10,000 a month there. Then you add $8,000 or $9,000 in streaming bandwidth bill. Then you add in the cost of the guys in the control room. Now you're starting to realize, oh, wait, no wonder it takes $40,000 a month, not counting my salary, to keep this network going, to push out free programming. Very expensive to do free television. And right now, folks, after this goes off the air, we put it back up online for people to watch for 7 days for free. And I'd like to keep doing that so we can educate as many people as we can, particularly new people. But I'm telling you, folks, if we don't see support kick up, we're going to have to start saying, well, it can't be 7 days anymore. Now it's going to be 5 days. Oh, we're still not being able to cover what we need. So we're going to have to go to 3 days. Oh, we're going to have to go to 2 days. We'll go live and then put it up online for 2 days. A lot of people are going to miss out because a lot of people can't keep up with the volume of content we're putting out in 2 days. We don't want to see that. But that's the only way we could get our bandwidth bill down, is to start limiting how many people can watch free programming, to get our bandwidth bill down. Because right now we have a lot of people chewing up bandwidth bill that never support us, never help out. But that's fine, because I think a lot of those people can't afford to give. A lot of them are here because they're seekers. They're searching, and they don't really know if they want to support us or not. They don't even know if they agree with us or not. They're just here learning. Some of them are skeptics and critics that don't like us at all. They just want to see what we have to say. But some of them, we have won them over. Some of them have become Christians, and they've turned into supporters financially as well. So there's a lot to be said for leaving it open for 7 days after this show goes off the air tonight. Put it up online tomorrow morning for 7 days for free. We want to keep that doing. We want to keep doing that. Now, if you agree with that, that's ministry. That's what we call ministry programming. And that's in part what our foundation is for. So would you go to worldviewfoundation.com? Worldviewfoundation.com and make a contribution? Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Worldviewfoundation.com. There's our mailing address. There's our phone number. You can leave a voicemail for Melissa or text her. She'll get back with you, help you make a contribution over the phone. And if you do, we'll send you a receipt for your taxes the first week of February. That's when we send out those receipts. So thank you for your support. Now, another way, of course, the way you can support us is by taking advantage of some of the great resources at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You know them, Swish for Life, that's Numi with glutathione to detox your cells. Some studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Then we have the Worldview Healthcare. That gives you an emergency pack, various types of emergency packs and antibiotics that you need to have on hand in case there is a crisis, or you just don't want to go to the urgent care when you're sick. You know you got the flu, and you just need to get a good antibiotic and go to bed, like I did last year when I had pneumonia. I didn't have to go to urgent care with a temperature of 103 and feeling like death warmed over. I took my amoxicillin and went to bed. Never had to go see the doctor. I had my own urgent care. Or you can go to worldviewtalk.com and pick up a satellite phone for free if you just pay the very minimal monthly fee, just a minimal monthly fee for 1 year, and you get the satellite phone for free. Or you get a Starlink for free when you sign up for one of their very reasonable plans. Or you can get one of their solar generators or bulletproof backpacks at worldviewtalk.com. Then we have Bella Grace. You know, I take it each and every day with 3 powerful ingredients that do so much for you with 80 clinical trials behind it. Then you have The Vault, where you can watch over 35 years now, over 35 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks. You'll be able to live stream our national conference coming up October 3rd and 4th. You'll be able to live stream it if you have a 1-year membership to The Vault. Lots of reasons to join, and it's a great way to support us. Worldview Gold, put gold into your IRA or take possession of gold. Find out about numismatic or freshly minted numismatic 1933 and older, which provides privacy. Get your free packet of information, worldviewgold.com. Okay? There is our national conference coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Get your tickets. Don't forget about the banquet on Thursday night with Adia Miramonde speaking. Then we have worldviewvitamins.com. That's Dr. Bashima. And the very brand new super antioxidant pack we've put together that includes that broccoli in there to help fight, cancer. Can we say that? Not making a claim, but hey, that's why we put it in there. Go to worldviewvitamins.com for that. Then there's Gatatana. That's the phytoplankton I take every day in my drink. Half a scoop goes to Dolly. Then there's the Worldview water. I drink water that's highly filtered and filtered out all the nasty chemicals that can actually cause cancer. Why would you want to drink that water, right? Don't. Get a filter that filters it out. Then you can have one for your shower like I do. worldviewwater.net. So all of these sponsors are right there, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, and you can help keep this broadcast ministry and service going. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. So I hope by now you have gone out, tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. Let everybody know that I'm about to interview a good friend of mine from Ukraine, and we're going to help you understand, a lot of what's happening that you're not going to get from the mainstream corporate media. So have you tweeted, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social? Do it now, because we're going to Mark Musser. But first, don't forget, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Joining me now is an old-time friend of the broadcast who's been in studio with us a few times, Dr. Mark Musser. Well, we've been trying to interview him for a while, but the climate just wasn't right. But maybe things have settled down enough that we can get an interview in with him without too much consequences. Let's pray for none. He is broadcasting with us tonight from Ukraine. We'll bring you up to speed for those of you who are not familiar with him, but much of our audience is, because he's been in some of our documentaries and at some of our conferences. He joins us now. Dr. Mark Musser, welcome back to the broadcast. It's great to have you on and great to see you again.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you very much. It's an honor.
Tell our audience, maybe those who don't know you, Dr. Mark, you're from the United States. How did you end up in Ukraine? What have you been up to the last few years? Because I know you haven't always been in Ukraine. I guess you had to move out for a while, right?
Well, it's a long story. We actually, the first time we went to the mission field was in 1995, and I was fresh out of seminary, and really largely because of the results of what Ronald Reagan did. He opened up a lot of things to where we were able to do ministry in the former Soviet Union. And so the outfall, the fallout of all the things that he did, politically speaking, internationally, allowed us an open door to go into the former Soviet Union. So we did that. So in 1995, 96, we spent a year in Belarus. And so we were there for a year. After that, my colleague that I met in Belarus, he actually moved to Ukraine, because in Ukraine, things were wide open. In Belarus, things are very controlled. And so we had ministry there, but we were watched very heavily there. And so the church that we tried to get established, and it was established, it was under duress, and we were very concerned about that church. But we had to leave because of all kinds of pressures there. So it's just time for us to go. And my colleague went to Kiev, Ukraine. And in Ukraine, things were wide open. We had nothing to interfere with our ministries at all. And he finally convinced me that I need a lot of help, because he was teaching all the time in Ukraine. So we joined him in 1998. We lived in Ukraine up until 2004. And I was teaching all the time, constantly, almost every night. I mean, a lot of teaching, during the week and then on Sundays, of course. And we were teaching all over the country, primarily in Kiev, but in other places too. And then we would still go to Belarus to encourage people there. So that ministry never came to a stop. We established a church in Kiev. We established a Bible college in Kiev. Again, Jim Myers, my friend, the colleague in the ministry, a lot of it was his vision, but we helped him, and we were there to support what was going on. And so we had a lot of things that were happening with regard to the mission here in Ukraine. 2004, we decided that it was time for us to go home. We started a church in Olympia, Washington, my hometown. Yet I continued to go to Ukraine frequently, and even sometimes to Belarus, again, just to encourage people. So I never lost any of these contacts. We started the Bible college in Kiev, Ukraine, like in year 2000. And what we started to do is we would start bringing men into the Bible college to teach for 2-week modules. And so then I would come in too. So we started a church. I worked part-time. And then I would come in for 2 weeks in Kiev and do this usually twice a year, sometimes 3. And so this ministry just continued. And we did that for a number of years, 14 years, while we established a church in Olympia, Washington. Well, in 2018, the ministry was really growing in Ukraine, much more than I had anticipated. We had, largely because our Bible college graduates were graduating. They lived in different places across the country. And then we worked with another ministry that had a really good idea on how to get some of these graduates of ours to, get them working in the ministry quicker. And so we started teaching these books of the Bible that are outlined for them so they are already able to teach the Word of God, grace, dispensations, all the things that we believe, very quickly. And so this really helped them to blossom also in their faith as they taught God's Word. And so this was a growing ministry. And so when I would go back to Ukraine for any length of time, I was teaching more and more and more. And some of my trips are getting to the point where it's 3 weeks, a month. And so I finally told my wife, Karen, maybe we need to return back to the mission field. So we actually did that in 2018. And it's hard to raise money. I'm just a farmer from Olympia, Washington. I mean, everything is pretty much a fight in terms of what I do, trying to get things accomplished. So what I did is I basically had my wife, she'll tell me she's a hero of the faith, but she was an international school teacher. And so there is a school system that we know very well that Karen, my wife, worked for in the past. And they actually set up they have schools all over the former Soviet Union. And so what I thought, they can help us take care of expenses. And then I don't have to sit there and spend a lot of time trying to raise money. We can go over right away. And then what little money I get can pay for the ministry expenses. And then maybe over time we can develop a good ministry for ourselves, which has now finally happened. Okay, but it has taken a number of years. So we moved back to 2018. We asked specifically for either Minsk, Belarus, the school system, or Kiev, Ukraine. But at that time, nothing was available. We could not get into those schools because everybody wanted to go, especially to Kiev. It was the premier school at that time for the school system. So we kind of gave up on the idea, but then the school system talked to us and said, you know what, there is an opening in Yerevan, Armenia. And we looked at that and I realized, oh, wow, okay, that's the former Soviet Union. They speak Russian there. We can survive there. It's very Soviet in terms of its history. And so we actually went to Yerevan, Armenia. And then I could use that as a home base to travel, to go to Ukraine, sometimes go to Belarus. Even those days, I went to Russia as well. We had ministries there too that I kept going up until the time of the war. And then I haven't been able to go back there, sadly, because of what's going on with this terrible war. So we started to establish ministries in Armenia, of all places. I never expected that. It took a while. It took some time, but we were faithful. God gave us some grace, gave us some open doors, and everything was going great. And I would go to Ukraine even more often. I could get on an airplane from Yerevan, Armenia, like 7 in the morning. I would be in Ukraine at 9 in the morning. That I could start teaching classes at 10. I mean, I did that. And that was going super. okay, up until COVID. And then that whole caused all kinds of problems. But interestingly enough, it actually opened up doors for us in Armenia. And so a lot of people could not come in. And I'm not trying to be funny or to be, basically God sort of got rid of my competition, okay, because no one can come in because I'm just a farmer, from Olympia, Washington, okay, and I just teach God's word. And so all these big names, those guys couldn't come in. And so basically I was able to do a lot of teaching.
Wow.
And because of that, we were able to establish a good ministry in Armenia. So that lasted for about 3 years. And because of COVID, we had to leave. And what we did is that we bought a home in Ukraine. And our plan was to retire my wife, and then we do ministry in Ukraine. And so that was going to be what we were going to do, just do ministry in Ukraine, because again, the ministry was really growing in Ukraine at that time. But then the war broke out. And at that time, we were without a job and without a home. The home was in Ukraine, but there was a war going on.
So you had to flee.
So
obviously, you left the country.
Yeah, well, we had to do something. And so very interesting, the school said, you know what, we have an opening in Minsk, Belarus. Would you be willing to go there?
Now, you say the school, is this is a chain of Christian
schools? It's a school
schools?
system. Yes. Well, it's not Christian. It's not Christian. It's international. There's basically it's the international school. It's an expensive school. So basically you're talking about diplomats, you're talking about businessmen. They will send their kids to these schools so they have some English background.
But there's a chain of them through that region.
Yes, right. And so we actually moved to Minsk, Belarus. So the Lord answered our prayer to go to Minsk, Belarus for 3 years. And we were there. And as long as I stayed with the international the international English-speaking community, I wasn't bothered too much by the authorities. And then we would encourage the church that we helped establish, a long time ago, back in the 90s. And as long as things were relatively quiet, there was going to be no problem. Although I was hauled in for questioning and, that kind of stuff. But I still traveled. I still did my thing. And we went to Ukraine even during the war. And then the school system said, you know what, our school is shrinking here in Minsk, and we have to let you guys go. However, there's an opening in Kiev, Ukraine. So the Lord answered the prayer to that too. So now we are in Ukraine. We just moved here. It was a huge move. It was a difficult move. We got it done by God's grace. And now we are hoping to encourage people here, as we have always wanted to do for a number of years, but have been hindered because of international troubles.
Yeah.
Whether that's whether it's the health stuff or the war. So now we are here, and that's kind of that's the shortest as I can make it.
Well, I'm glad you gave us that background, because I wanted folks to understand who you are, because you and I have been friends for quite some time, in our studio quite some time, in our documentaries and whatnot. All right, so with that as our background, let's get to some understandings. Now, as you probably well know, or maybe you don't know, but I'm sure you keep up with what's going on here in the U.S., there is a big division here that's now come into the Christian community and in the MAGA and political world, right? There is, of course, the controversy over Israel. As you know, replacement theology, very popular today in the churches of America. For those who don't know, that's the idea that God is done with the Jewish people, and the Jewish people have been replaced now by the church. The church is going to be the new Israel, if you will. Replacement theology, very much anti-Semitism, or at least lays the foundation for it, I believe. That's, of course, now gone into the evangelical world, and now we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism big time now with what's going on in Israel in the MAGA world, right? And I know you're keeping track of that. But there's also the division of Russia and Ukraine. And there are those now here in America that are defending Putin. He's a lion of Christianity. He's trying to have Christian values in Russia, and he's a lion of Christianity. And then there are others who say Putin is a dictator. He's shutting down churches. He's, stays in there without elections. He's a tyrant. He's a dictator. Then there are others who say, oh no, Zelensky is a great guy, and he has to be used to defeat Russia because Putin wants to revive the old Russian Empire and put it all back together again. So there's these sides quarreling with each other here in America. Can you bring the first-hand truth to our audience when it comes to Putin, when it comes to Zelensky, when it comes to this war? How do you perceive it as an American, as a patriot, as a Christian? How do you perceive the facts?
Well, it's a big question. The biggest thing, number one, that I always start with is that you have to look at things from a spiritual point of view. And regardless of what's going on between, Russia and Ukraine, that the biggest target of the devil is to destroy that religious freedom that Ukraine has had for many years. So this allowed us to do a lot of things in Ukraine that you simply were not able to do in Russia. You could not do them in Belarus. It simply was not possible because of the way things were set up in those countries, and they're very antagonistic toward Protestants.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. So you're saying there is not full religious liberty and freedom in Russia?
Oh, no, of course not. Protestants especially you're not allowed to do any kind of evangelism on the streets. I mean, that is strictly forbidden. Whatever you do is going to be inside of your church. And then you have to go through a very difficult process of registration with the government, and they look at everything and try to cause as many problems as they can. Let's say you're a Baptist church or a Pentecostal group. So they have to go through all kinds of what you would call like bureaucracy, even worse than the IRS type stuff, that in order for you to be a functioning church, especially if you're a Protestant. So
that's in Russia.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about obviously the Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church? They obviously are everywhere, right? Doesn't Putin consider himself Russian Orthodox?
Well, I mean, apparently he does. I mean, he goes and, observes some of the rituals and talks with some of these guys, but if you have some private interviews that he had with certain people back in the earlier years, he's not really what you would consider to be a strong Orthodox believer. The other problem, however, that people don't realize is that the Communist Party infiltrated deeply the Orthodox Church during the Soviet Union. Okay, and so basically the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church is very compromised. And they're very
to this day, right?
Oh, of course, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So when I interviewed a former KGB officer for one of my documentaries, that you were also, I think, in that one, the former KGB officer living in Maryland was saying to me back then, and that documentary came out in 2018, he was saying, look, the Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church is filled with KGB people. And of course, the concern is that some of them have been shipped over here to the United States and are operating really as sources for what would be, I guess, the FSB here in America. Would you hold that same concern?
Oh, of course. It's basically the Soviet Union, the communists used the Orthodox Church to send spies throughout the entire world back during the Cold War. And I have no reason to suspect that anything different is going on today. So it's pretty much the same. I mean, wherever you have a Russian Orthodox Church that may be kind of a big one or a large one, certainly you're going to have some connections to, the Russian government, that they're using those churches to do their, to provide a foundation like a base to do, operations. Yes, of course.
And tell me about Putin. What is your thoughts of Putin? Is he a communist? Is he a communitarian, merging big government, big business? I mean, how would you describe Putin today as the former KGB guy? What is he today, you think?
Well, I don't know anything about the man. I mean, I never met him, never talked to him, but watching what he's doing, I would say all of the above. I mean, you just basically gave a catalog of what's going on. His statements, you can look at him. He said that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest catastrophe of the 20th century. He's a former KGB guy. He was a KGB lawyer. Okay, St. Petersburg, that tells you something. He basically, the KGB uses law to control Russia. And, that's kind of what they do. They're into the legalisms. It's like a super political legalism, which they control a lot of things so that everything is basically forbidden. But a lot of people kind of do what they have to because they have to survive. But if they want to come get you, they can. See, so that's kind of how it's set up. And I know that the West is becoming the same way, sadly. But they are the paragons of how to practice that. Okay. And so The West are just pikers compared to what these guys are doing on the other side of the old Iron Curtain. So and now he's trying to use, I would suspect, the Orthodox Church to whitewash their sins to some extent to make it, look relatively like we're, some kind of Christian foundation. And, they have come out with some things that, the West is so terrible today with regard to the homosexuality and the madness of the sexual revolution that sometimes it makes Putin look pretty good. So this has fooled a lot of people. However, I would remind people is that the so-called sexual revolution that really hit America in the 50s largely came from communist sources. I mean, the big Hollywood fight between of the family. Okay, the Marxism is against the family. This was one of their primary pillars. And so they were using the Hollywood to attack the American family because they recognized that the American family was at really the heart of what made America strong. Mm-hmm. So that whole McCarthyism, everybody talks about that. The war, political war going on, the Hollywood war going on at that time, and Hollywood was actually fomented by a lot of Marxist activity. Mm-hmm. So, in my sense, my sympathies are nothing when they complain about West becoming so corrupt. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but you guys played a big role in helping to bring that about. You used Marilyn Monroe. She was basically pretty much a communist, or certainly a socialist back in those days. And she basically helped to set up the sexual revolution in the 60s. And now you guys are complaining that we got all these homosexuals running around. Well, what do you think was going to happen? It's just a lot of foolishness going on because people don't know the scriptures. Okay, they don't know the seriousness of what God's word has to say about a lot of things. How to live, how to function, how to do politics, whatever it is, okay, business, religion, all those things. The Bible has something to say about all of it, and everybody's ignoring it. And we're just now on a race to the bottom as I look at what's going on in our world. Who's going to get there first is a big question that I still haven't figured out.
What about Zelensky? Let's talk about him now. There are people over here that say he's a tyrant, he's a dictator, he's shutting down the media, shuts down churches, hasn't had elections. He doesn't want to. President Trump was talking to him this week about, setting up elections and joking, maybe if there's a war, I can suspend the elections. Maybe that would happen in 3.5 years, like meaning toward the end of his term. And people in the room laughed. So he was kind of chiding Zelensky about the fact you need to have elections open. And he was giving his excuses, well, maybe we can do this and blah, 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 blah. We see his popularity is in the basement over there, right? And now we're getting reports, I guess, on hacked data that there's maybe been as many as 1.7 million Ukrainians killed in the war. So this guy is pretty unpopular. We got videos of them capturing people right off the streets, kids to seniors, people in their 60s. So what is the truth based on your firsthand experience? What's the truth about Zelensky?
Well, again, I'm just a farmer from Olympia, Washington. But Zelensky, first of all, he's Hollywood. Okay, he's from Dnipropetrovsk, okay, which is an area that was run by the mafia back in the older days. It still is. So basically, he's controlled by what you would say mafia money. We could spend a lot of time there. I won't do it because I might get myself in trouble. He's Jewish, okay, but very secular. And I will say this is that what really troubled me, I think at the very beginning of this war, he did a lot of good things. Amazing. I was surprised. When I found out where he was from, I knew right away, even before the war, that, okay, that this guy's probably controlled by Dnipropetrovsk money. Okay, and today they call it Dnipro. But anyway. Once the war broke out, he did a lot of good things. However, right as Ukraine had their biggest success, they were able to push back the Russian army all across the southern front, even get them out of, from Kiev area and other places. And he gave a speech that really troubled me. Okay, a speech in New Year's speech. And this was like in 2022. By the way, right before then, in Kherson, the city of Kherson, not the Kherson region, but the city of Kherson, the Russian army was completely surrounded. And Ukraine was going to destroy that army. And Biden did not allow them to do that. And it's an interesting question. What would have happened had Biden not ordered that? Because more than likely, the Crimea would have been much more wide open to any kind of counterattacks that Russia at that time had no answers to. So Biden told Zelensky to stand down and allow the Russian army to get out. And ever since that time, basically Ukraine has done very little on the battlefront, except hold the lines more or less kind of on their back foot, losing a little bit all the time. They did a few things in Kursk, in Russia, of course, last year. But what I really look at is that, again, the spiritual point of view. Zelensky gave a speech, and he made this comment, that really, he actually, the first part of the speech was fine, but then he goes in at the end of it. He made this comment that, we're not waiting for miracles. We're going to create our own miracles. And of course, they were on the riding high on this success of pushing supposedly the second strongest army in the world all across the front of Ukraine in the southeast. And ever since that time, basically, Ukraine has not done much of anything. Really, I mean, they except for hold the lines, which is actually a big thing in terms of holding this force, which is very still very strong. Okay, and so I just look at that and I'm thinking, first of all, we create our own miracles. I mean, that's very Soviet. Okay, I mean, this is the heart of atheism. I mean, so you're fighting against a man who has never repented of his communism. Okay, atheism, and then you're saying that we're not waiting for miracles; we create our own miracles. Okay, I mean, to me, this is really getting to be very troublesome. It's just a revelation of some problems.
Not to mention the fact he seems to have his, I don't know, what looks like almost like his homosexual dancing, stilettos, transgenderism, drag queen type stuff. Playing the piano, Oh
yeah, he's a crude comic. This is the other problem. And yes, and in my mind, there's no way that a guy like that, can be a hero. Okay, it's just not happening. This is a Hollywood fantasy. Okay.
So is this, speaking of Hollywood fantasy, is this then, what is going on here, Mark? Even if it's your theory, what is your theory? Is this a play? Are these two sides playing a part? And if so, who's controlling them? Is this, we know the CIA has been in Ukraine. We know the government's been funding it. We're fighting a proxy war with Russia. We know we have 10 CIA bases over there. We've had biolabs over there. Is this just the playground for the CIA in America, as many say, to launder money? I've interviewed Rudy Giuliani several times. A few years ago when I interviewed him, he said they're laundering massive money and people on both sides of the aisle in America are benefiting from it. Now you seem to have organized crime that got brought up tonight in the Ukraine. Maybe they're all a bunch of organized crime bosses on an international level. I don't know what point you got other things involved, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and who knows what else. But is Ukraine being used to try to break up Russia? Is the goal to break up Russia into several regions, maybe get rid of Putin, to have a new world order that Putin doesn't want to go along with, to also get the minerals and assets in Russia? What do you see going on here?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, the Soviet Union, what we're still watching is the collapse of the Soviet Union. Okay, this is still part of the same, and it has nothing to do really with the West per se. We may have helped, try to do some things. I think Reagan was really, this is what we need to copy in terms of if you want to have any kind of victory. We need to get back to what Reagan said and do the things that Reagan did. So far, I haven't really seen that. So it's just chaos that's going on. But with regard to, the mafia, okay, basically after the Soviet Union, first of all, the Soviet Union, socialism, communism does not work, okay? It's idealism, it's pure fantasy, political fantasy, okay? They were not able to produce the goods that people needed. So what happened? They produced the biggest black market the world's ever seen, okay, in order to feed people. So when the whole thing collapsed, okay, what happened is that basically the Soviet Union, especially in Russia, became the biggest mafia the world's ever seen. And right now you have, and the lawlessness is just outrageous. Okay. And Ukraine, they have lawlessness too, but where did they learn it from? They learned it from the Soviet Union, okay, which Russia has never repented of. Okay, my sympathies are nothing on the other side, because these guys have still not got the memo that this stuff doesn't work. Okay, and they're continuing to believe all this foolish stuff that they've got going on. They now mix it up with business and the Orthodox Church, but that's another story. But I just look at what's going on. It's a tragedy.
But do you think
everywhere
that do you think the globalists here in America and other places are using this war to try to break up Russia, to get rid of Putin, regime change?
But the first globalist, Brandon, the first globalist of the world was the Soviet Union. Come on, guys. I mean, they were the ones who they call it the Soviet Union. It was a union of, their idea was to take over the world with their globalism. Okay. So, I mean, again, my sympathies are nothing. The idea that Putin is against the globalists, I mean, for crying out loud, this guy, okay, they all want their own globalism.
Okay, so now you're getting to where I'm trying to figure this out, what you think. Yeah. So you don't think this is some kind of game going on here. You really do think there's an agenda. Now, the question I had, I keep going back to is, do the globalists want a brand of globalism that Putin doesn't want? And therefore, do they want his land, his assets, to get rid of him because he won't go along with their brand of globalism? Then is there Putin?
It's just exactly.
Putin and China and others, they have their brand of globalism, which you now see represented in the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and some of. So do we have now a warring faction of people that all want globalism? They just want a different brand of it. And it's going to be, is America and Europe going to be in charge of it? Or is it going to be Russia and China in charge of it? Is that what's going on now? Factions of globalism?
Yeah, basically what's going on, all the socialists are fighting against each other. Okay, I mean, and even in America, I mean, basically, I mean, I know things have changed a little bit since the election, but so-called capitalism is dead. I mean, socialism is everywhere, and they're all fighting against each other right now. Okay, and so the idea that socialism leads to peace, I think, is completely false. And right now, it's very similar to World War II, where you have various socialism are fighting against each other. You know, the Nazis called themselves National Socialism, and they were rooted in fascism, which, at that time, without the racism, was actually a very popular socialist movement in Europe back in the days. And a lot of people tried to copy it, thought it was a great thing. Even FDR went along with some of these things. And so the war in World War II is fighting over what kind of socialism are we going to have, okay? And I think that's really, things haven't changed. Solomon tells us there's nothing new under the sun. We're almost in a very similar type situation. However, I would say that many of the communists, basically have devolved into various forms of fascism, where you have the government in bed with the government powers, and they're prostituting with each other.
So big government and big business.
Yeah, I just think we have fascism everywhere today. You can call it multiculturalism if you want, but that's just multi-tribalism. And I think fascism is everywhere and on any and all sides. And you can even look into some of the people that supported Putin, back in the day, and he's still around. You got a guy named Alexander Dugin. He started his career in the 90s a little bit with politically after the collapse of the Soviet Union. He called it the National Bolshevik Party. Okay, I mean, okay, so, and he loves Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger, he never repented of his Nazism. He's a National Socialist all the way from top to bottom, and that guy loves him. Okay, and then even this Wagner group. Remember back in the day, the first part of the war. I mean, Putin had to get rid of this Wagner guy. He was a kind of a general of mercenaries. Okay, well, he named his group after Wagner. Okay, well, why did he do that? Well, Wagner is Hitler's favorite musician. Okay, so I mean, and then you have all the stuff going on in the West. I mean, it's just horrible. The Green Movement, okay, which is a form of fascism. Okay, and how this is corrupted with so much business and government in bed together, where they use their corporate powers, under the legalistic system which they've all set up, and then you and I are forced to live according to their system. I mean, this is what's really going on, and so. All of the powers that be, they're very socialistic, fascist in various ways. Maybe a mixture of all of them, that's fine. Okay, and they're all fighting against each other right now. And you and I are watching the results of all this, and it's a global disaster.
So there's really not a side that we as constitutionalists and Christians can get on board with, is there?
No, this is my problem. So when people ask me, what side are you on in Ukraine? I said, well, I'm for Ukraine. Why? Because my home is there. Okay. so then we go from there, and then we have people we know and love. Okay, we have ministered with them. They are heroes of the faith, and they're doing some amazing things despite all the troubles that they've been forced to go through over the last couple of years. And so, again, you have to get back to the spiritual point of view. Basically, the devil is using both Europe and Russia to destroy Ukraine, that religious freedom that was so important, despite the fact that, I know Ukraine has lots of corruption problems, Soviet Union, socialism, whatever it is, okay, and the history is still with us. But basically, it's a gigantic spiritual pincer movement where Ukraine's spiritual freedom is being destroyed, and it doesn't matter who wins at the end of the day. That will be, is to get rid of that, to stop that.
So let's move into, I know where you and I are on Bible prophecy. How do you see this lining up with Bible prophecy? I'm teaching through the book of Revelation right now. Sunday night will be lesson 47, Revelation chapter 20, verse 1, the millennial kingdom, as you know. But we've studied the Antichrist, and he's had, according to Daniel, to rip out, he shows up on the scene, and to get the New World Order, he has to rip out 3 of these groups by the roots, right, and replace them.
Well, right. I mean, we know that from, during the Great Tribulation. Yes. Right.
So are we going to be seeing this quest of globalism fighting each other all the way up until the Antichrist comes, and he himself is going to have to get involved in that fight, rip out 3 of the leaders and replace them to get his globalist system? So if the globalists are already fighting each other, it seems as though that's actually another sign that we're kind of approaching the stage setting for Bible prophecy, because that seems to be what's going on when the Antichrist arrives. He's trying to get the New World Order going. They're still fighting each other, and he rips out 3 of them by the roots and replaces them so he can get the New World Order established. So how do you see this based on looking through the lens of Bible prophecy? How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think that basically that's what's going on. I mean, what you're describing is pretty well what's happening now. And I think that it will help set up what we call the end times. The only thing that, I talk about, people get upset with me, which, that's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but I look at the Bible verses. It talks about kings. And I take those verses seriously, meaning that all the European kingdoms are still there. Okay, they just strangely disappeared during World War I. They got scared because of the Russian Revolution. Of course, the communists killed, their king, okay, and their tsar. And so a lot of the kingdoms kind of went underground. Okay, the only one that's out there that's big and powerful is the English king, but most of Europe, they're all kingdoms. Okay, then you have the Middle Eastern kingdoms too, and I'm more paying attention not so much to the socialism per se as it is to the kingdoms. Okay, and I think that something is going to happen to bring these kingdoms back. The socialism will fail, the democracies will fail, the so-called capitalism will fail, and so this will bring us back to some kind of a desire for the kingdoms of Europe to return, and maybe the Middle East will join in on this. That's sort of my view on that. I could be wrong, and I'm not going to be dogmatic on it, but that's, as I look at these verses that talk about kings, I take them seriously. And I think that we're talking about actual real kings. And Europe is full of what we call the aristocracies, and also their kingdoms or fiefdoms that really go back for hundreds of years. So I pay attention to the kings. I watch what's going on with them.
Well, don't you think that kind of fits with what the Bible talks about, particularly in Daniel, when you have these different kingdoms that are represented, and they seem to be there geographically, but also in their history, and they're going to be eventually revived with a revived Roman Empire, and a little piece of all of them being there and represented. That sounds like what you're kind of saying here, is it not?
Yes, no, precisely. Yeah. So I just think actual kings are going to finally take it over. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer all the time. And of course, the English king is, the most powerful of all. But I think something will trip things up to where these kingdoms will come back.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, Daniel even, it's like he singles out these kings, the 7 and 10 kings, that people debate what all that means, but something's going to happen. They're going to show up and they're going to be ready to play the game. And I think that probably will happen pretty sudden.
So
whatever's going on now will help set that up.
You also believe in a Eurocentric world government, correct?
Right. Yes. Right. I do.
Yeah. And so I think you and I are so much in agreement. All right. So how should Christians in America be praying right now? I mean, we are divided, and you have people who have picked the sides of, in America, they're now many of them in the churches are anti-Israel. Then you have, of course, us, the Christian Zionists, that are saying, look, I don't agree with everything the Israeli government does, but I understand God's plan for the Jewish people, and I'm opposed to anti-Semitism. And I know Satan's goal is to destroy every Jew on the planet so that there is not the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, and the Jews don't cry out, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. They don't become believers. They don't preach the gospel. The 144,000 Jewish evangelists, they don't literally physically roll into a millennial kingdom. If all the Jews are wiped out, God loses, he has no millennial kingdom, Satan wins. We know that's not going to happen. So we have the division with Israel among churches today and Christians. We have the division over Russia. We have the division over Ukraine. How should Christians be praying right now?
Well, I think we need to be praying for God's people in all these different countries, okay? So that, basically the pipeline for grace, the pipeline for blessing is going to be through the believers. And so if you have a group of believers in any country, okay, like Paul tells us in 1 Timothy chapter 2, we should pray for our leaders. And I think this is what needs to be done. I get very frustrated. I get very saddened. I get very discouraged watching the political situation. Okay. And so all we can do is practice the word of God. And so this is like Psalm 119, for example. I've been teaching this in a lot of different places all over the former Soviet Union. And we're doing this now in Ukraine too. David's at a dead end. The political leadership wants to kill him. And the political leadership is not interested in practicing God's word. And so David says, I want to practice your word. And this is what Psalm 119 is all about, 176 verses, basically a big prayer. And David says to the Lord, if you don't stop what's going on, at least to slow it down, I'm about ready to die. And so something needs to be done. You have promised judgment, in the sense that not that he's trying to be, that he ever executed judgment against Saul. That was his enemy. David never did that. But he said, Lord, we need you. That's your responsibility. You're going to do that. And we have the criminality going on. And if this continues, it's interfering with our work. We're not able to do the job. And so on that basis, I think we can pray that God help us. And we're not looking to judge anybody. And in that sense, we want, that's all God's business. Let him take care of it. And so we pray, especially for believers in these various countries, including Ukraine.
How do you think President Trump is going to get a peace deal? It seems as though right now that Putin is not going to take the deal that's been offered. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like President Trump might be backing up a little bit and now saying instead of some kind of meeting of the three leaders, he wants to see Putin and Zelensky first meet before he gets involved, which I don't know that that's going to happen. If you had to guess right now, do you think they get a peace deal? Who gives on either side, and what do they give up?
Well, I mean, whatever peace will be established, I can't imagine that it will be very good. And the question will be, how long would it last? Probably not very long. My confidence is really low. I mean, the only way to really bring about the peace is to put a stop to it. I mean, you have to force your hand in order to put a stop to it. Okay, otherwise it's not going to stop, and it will just continue until it comes to a stop. And so someone's going to have to pull out the gun and say that, okay, that we're not going to do this anymore. And we need a dirty Harry to tell people, okay, go ahead, make my day, and put the gun to somebody's head and put a stop to it. Until that happens, it will just continue to.
But how do you do that with Russia, who has so many nuclear weapons and is got hypersonic missiles and 5th and 6th generation weaponry? I mean, and America, who's going to do that? America, we're already fighting a proxy war with Iran through Israel. We're already at war now with Russia through Ukraine. We've given up a lot of our weaponry to Ukraine. Our stockpiles here in the U.S. are low. We've given just a bunch to Israel. So we're not in a good spot. We know that China is now moving and aggressively working, not only here in the U.S., buying up our farmland, cyber hacking on us, information operation. We also know that they're providing the precursor chemicals to the cartels in Mexico to make drugs. Now President Trump is declaring war on the cartels in Mexico. We know he's now put 4,000 troops on a ship headed toward Venezuela to try to say we got to get rid of a guy that's running a drug cartel in pushing drugs in America, their president of Venezuela, Maduro. Is that really the reason? Or is it the fact that you have China in Venezuela, you have Iran in Venezuela, you have Hezbollah in Venezuela, you have all of these players there, and you have what's been flying into northern Venezuela, Caracas, for close to 20 years now, or certainly since 2008, 2009, 10, flights from Tehran into northern Venezuela. Many think, hey, they're setting up missile sites over there. There's been rumors of that for a long time. And now, of course, they're getting right at our back door. So America is stretched thin. We don't have the military that they brag about that we have. And now North Korea is bolstering their military building.
I was going to say, you forgot to mention North Korea, but you got
it in there.
No, I mean, you have described, okay, our world's in deep, deep trouble, okay, and everybody is being stretched, to their limits, and without, an understanding of God's word, the practice of God's word. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to see us through what's going on. I mean, at this point, I don't see any kind of peace deal, okay, with Putin. I mean, and if it is, it won't last very long. It'll be like a false peace, almost like a little Antichrist type of situation in Israel. So whatever's going on, my confidence is pretty low, and all we can do is walk with God, trust Him, and realize that Russia's not basically that their war. They're all stuck in Ukraine right now. Okay, they're in big trouble. Okay, and their nuclear stuff is basically run by the same people. It's pretty much the same type of stuff going on. Whatever you see going on with the war in right now in Ukraine is pretty much the same with regard to the nuclear stuff too. It's all run by former communists who've never repented. They think they still they haven't got the memo. That stuff doesn't work. Basically, it's a corrupt system. People have, sold out all kinds of things, basically their army, their weapons, all kinds of things. So that stuff wasn't even there when the war started. So because the corruption is so high.
The corruption in Ukraine is so high.
No, in Russia too.
Oh,
See, the Russia is that's the epicenter of the Soviet corruption. Okay, the mafia. Okay, that's where it all began. And Ukraine is just a little guy. They're just a little mafia.
In closing, talk to me about how you view America. Now that you've been out of the country so long and looking back, how do you view America? Where's America in all of this, in the end times?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we're not really seemingly mentioned. Like I said, I have a Eurocentric view of the end times, which is consistent with Daniel. And, he talks about basically East and West. And you could stretch it out, including America, too, because Europe basically founded America to Europeans. OK, but I think that at some point America is going to fade away. We're not quite there. Something's going to happen. Who knows what that might be, or somehow is absorbed by the what you would call the Roman Empire, which we are still a part of.
The revived Roman Empire, maybe dividing the world into 10 regions, etc.
So so that's possible too. And so we just look at that, and I know the Democrat Party, for example, basically they want America to be like Europe. Okay, well, at least for the time being, they've been set aside for a while, which is a good thing. However, Trump has his own troubles too, and so I just I look at him
tell me about that. Your views on President Trump.
Well, I mean, he's not a Republican. Number one, he's never been a Republican until recently. Okay, strangely, people. I saw that right away. Okay, you listen, anything he says. Okay, I can't remember any time he's really talked about freedom, responsibilities of freedom, okay, that kind of stuff. You never hear those kinds of discussions from him. I think he's probably more like a conservative Democrat, the ones that don't exist anymore, like an old JFK Democrat. I think the fact that he wanted to unveil the JFK files and get that revealed. RFK is now in his administration. I believe his dad was a JFK lover. Okay, his dad was all involved with the Democrats in New York. He made all of his money working with the government, in New York, which eventually was passed on down to Mr. Trump. Things like that. I mean, he's not really an ideologue, of course, and I don't like ideologues either. But you have to have principles, okay, in the midst of, especially now, and we need to have principles right now. And trying to these peace deals, where you actually side with the enemy versus lesser enemies is really a strange way of doing things. But he's done this his whole life. I mean, this part of the art of the deal, which has its own compromises. Okay, which is it's just another form of politicalism. It's the same type of stuff, just coming from a different direction. I'm actually more concerned about what's going on in the Middle East. Okay, if you look at the Abraham Accords, which he is basically the father of, you need to read those. It's very leftist. I mean, the Abrahamic religions are all going to come together, be one happy family, coexistence. I mean, all that language is there, and to me, that's not good. Okay, and so
I agree.
that peace.
And he just went and visited those sites there in the United Arab Emirates with the Catholic Church, the Jewish synagogue, and the Islamic mosque. He just went there. So I agree with you. That's very concerning, isn't it?
It is very concerning. And so now we have a Paula White, okay, who is a Pentecostal heretic. Oh, she is now in charge of our spirituality of America. And I'm just thinking, this is so strange. Okay. And then they all celebrated Paula White, Trump,
a Muslim holiday.
Yeah, they were Ramadan. I mean, so they had a happy Ramadan back in, May it was, I guess. And I'm just looking at this, guys, I mean, this is very serious times we live in. And if you don't understand the scriptures, you're not going to survive what's coming. That's just my view right now. I mean, it's just really very complicated.
Yes, it is. And you and I are on a lot of the same page, but I'm not shocked by that because we have the same worldview, the same theology, and the same eschatology. His website is rmarkmusser.com. It's been up on the screen there, folks. What will they find at your website in closing, Mark?
Well, that's just my personal website. Our mission website is Ararat Rainier East West Fellowship. You can look at that.
How do you spell that? How do you spell that?
The Ararat Rainier East West Fellowship. So Aruf is what our people call it. It's AREWF.org, www. AREWF.org. We have a website, and you can look into the things that we've been doing now for a number of years, and we will continue to do those. We have mission ministries all over the former Soviet Union, Armenia. We have things going on there. Georgia, we've started to do some things in the country of Georgia, Ukraine, of course. Belarus, we're restricted, but we still encourage people as much as possible there. We lived there for the last 3 years. Amazing time, a special time. And we actually have Romania, have some ministries there too. And lately we've had some open doors into Poland. So with all the things going on, God is still, his word is still being taught. Things are still marching forward, and we can't get too discouraged by what all is going on. We still have to do the job, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, despite all the conflicts that are roiling all around us.
Amen to that. I'm teaching through this book of Revelation on Sunday nights, and the response has been amazing. The growth of our organization, broadcast ministry, people with open hearts. In the darkness of all this spiritual battle, there does seem to be an awakening by many people wanting truth and hungry for the truth. So even in the midst of all this, I
think there's something going on. Yes, there's something going on with some young people, but the problem is we need to have people that can give a good, strong grace gospel and can actually teach God's word, and that's what was missing today. And anyway, we need to be praying for God's people to be discipling one another again, so we can get back to these basic truths that we all accept and
We
believe
need more
and trust.
Christian leaders. What I'm hearing you say is we need more
Yes.
Christian leaders, Christian evangelists, people that know the Bible, teaching the Bible. The harvest could be great, but we're lacking some workers here.
Right. No, that's right.
Wow. Mark Musser, greet your family for me. Mark, great having you from Ukraine tonight. We'll ask our audience to pray for you, for protection, for provision, for health, and just ministry opportunities all the way around. And please come back and visit soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. I had a good time. Thank you.
Mark
Appreciate
Musser,
it.
you too, Mark. Mark Musser checking in tonight, folks. All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. Do you appreciate what we just did with Dr. Mark Musser? I think it's very educational. We're going to put that up tomorrow morning at worldviewtube.com, and you're going to be able to go right back there to worldviewtube.com and grab a link and send it out to your family and friends free. Oh, wait a minute, free. How do you do that, Brandon? Yeah, we're brought to you by you, right? So please go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Check out all of our sponsors, great products that we believe in, that we use. And of course, don't forget about our foundation, okay? Worldviewfoundation.com. I saw it back up there. There it is, worldviewfoundation.com. All right, I'll be back, Lord willing, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, as I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. Sunday night, Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. The millennial reign of Christ. Literally heaven on earth, folks. It's a glorious study. But do you know there also are going to be people being born on earth during that time? Those who survived the tribulation or are Christians, they're going to be having children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Wait a minute. What will happen to them? Oh, what will they be doing? What will we be doing? You're going to love this study. Sunday night, Worldview Tube. Hope you'll join us. All right, we're out of time. Take care. May God save America.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome to the broadcast on this August 22nd, 2025. And we're joined today by Dr. Andy Woods. Dr. Andy Woods is going to join us right now. By the way, tonight I will have with me Dr. Mark Musser from Ukraine. I want to ask him about Russia. What should we really be thinking about Putin? What's his real worldview? What should we be thinking about Zelensky? Bottom line is, can we really root for any of these two guys? No. But we sure have an issue with wanting to pray for and be concerned about the church, the real church in Russia, real believers in Russia, and real believers in Ukraine. Also going to ask him tonight about globalism. Is this really a battle for who's going to be in charge? Is there a goal by both sides for a globalist system? The European Union, people that are fighting Russia through Ukraine, and then, of course, Russia's own desire with China and their alignment with Iran. Isn't this two groups that really all want globalism, just various brands of it? And will it ever get put together, or will it take an Antichrist figure to show up on the scene, as we see in Daniel, and rip out the roots of three of the leaders and replace them to get his new world order? We have so much to talk about with Dr. Mark Musser tonight, who's going to join us on Brandon House Live from Ukraine, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern Standard at worldviewtube.com. Today, I want to talk about the millennial kingdom. I'm studying through the book of Revelation, as you know, and teaching on it on Sunday nights. Next lesson, lesson 47, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Sunday night. I'll be there at Revelation chapter 20, verse 1. If you want to watch any of the lessons, we have opened them up for the public as a ministry of our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com. And you can now find them at lastdaysstudy.com. Lastdaysstudy.com. You'll have two S's in a row. Last, L-A-S-T, days. There's not two S's in a row, are there? L-A-S-T, yeah, last, L-A-S-T-S. No, L-A-S-T, well, how is it two? Yeah, days, there we go, L-A-S-T-D, I was trying to, where's the two S's? L-A-S-T-D, LastDaysStudy.com, and then another S for study.com. So there are two S's in a row. LastDaysStudy.com. They're all there, lesson 47, up to 47. We'll add 48 right away Sunday night. Now, let's talk about the millennium. Dr. Andy Woods joins me for that. Dr. Woods, welcome. Glad you're with us. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
We're going to get him focused up and centered, and then we'll bring him on. There we go. All right. I want to read a little bit from a great book you actually told me about. Grant Jeffrey has a book called Apocalypse, The Coming Judgment of the Nations. Great little book. And here's what he writes. Even the opponents of a literal millennium, meaning a 1,000-year reign, are forced by the historical evidence to acknowledge that the early church was clearly looking for Christ to return and set up his 1,000-year kingdom. And then he goes on to give several examples that I'll talk about on Sunday night of early church fathers right away talking about the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. And of course, while we do know that the word millennium doesn't appear in the Bible, we do know that it actually comes from the Latin for 1,000 years, correct, Dr. Woods?
Yeah, it's well, the word Trinity doesn't appear in the Bible either.
That's right.
You just have to have you got to have a label to talk about something, or else you'd be talking in what are called circumlocutions, meaning roundabout ways of saying things. So every discipline, finance, auto mechanic, whatever, has labels for things. So, you say to the surgeon's assistant, hand me the scalpel. I mean, you don't have time to explain what a scalpel is. It's just get me the darn thing now. So it's the same in theology, and that word millennium comes from the Latin, where all these things were debated, probably around the 4th century. Milli means 1,000, annum means years, millennium just means 1,000 years. The Greek word for it, which, as you know, is used 6 times in Revelation 20, verses 1 through 10, is kilia. So the first 2 centuries of the church, they didn't call themselves pre